A researcher built a tool to design new venoms, cone snail toxins, the kind with no antidote.
And a U.S. government official had to flag it as a biosecurity risk.
The tool was built on open source science anyone can download.
That's the problem.
The cone snail thing is what gets me. It's one of the most lethal animals on the planet. A single drop of venom can kill an adult human, and there's no antidote. And a research team built an AI specifically to engineer new versions of that venom, new ones that don't exist in nature.
And the system worked. It generated novel proteins that a trained researcher would have to evaluate seriously, not random noise, actual candidates.
Which is the shift. For most of the history of biology, the limiting factor was expertise. You needed decades of training to even know what questions to ask. The knowledge was the barrier.
Now, the knowledge is a dataset.
And a dataset doesn't care who's asking. That's the piece that a U.S. government official flagged last year. Not that a dangerous tool was built inside some classified program, but that it was built on open source science, published papers, public protein databases, freely available model weights.
The tools that made it possible are the same tools accelerating drug discovery and cancer research. AlphaFold, the system that predicted the shape of almost every known protein, that's public. The datasets researchers train on are public. You can't classify your way out of this.
So the conversation about restriction keeps running into the same wall. Every regulatory proposal eventually hits the fact that the underlying science is already out there and has been for years.
And the people building these tools aren't hiding. The cone snail research was published. The authors flagged their own concerns in the paper. There's this strange situation where the scientists most worried about the risk are the ones doing the most to surface it, because they'd rather the biosecurity community be looking at real examples than theorizing.
Which is probably right. But it also means the capability demonstration happens in public before anyone has figured out what to do about it.
Protein design is accelerating faster than any governance structure has moved. The gap between what's technically possible and what anyone is actually watching keeps getting wider.
And the cone snail was flagged. Someone noticed. The question is what noticing even means when the tools are already distributed, already being iterated on, already running on hardware anyone can rent by the hour.
There are maybe a few dozen people in the world who genuinely understand both the biology and the AI well enough to evaluate what's coming next.
Wall Street has its own answer to that question.
Move the money faster and build the walls before regulators finish drawing the map. JPMorgan just filed paperwork for its second tokenized money market fund. This one lives on Ethereum, a public blockchain network, essentially shared ledger software that anyone can build financial products on top of. And it's designed specifically so stablecoin companies can hold their reserves in it.
Two things sitting inside that sentence. A money market fund is basically a holding place for cash. You park money in it and it earns a small return by buying things like U.S. Treasuries, government debt. And a stablecoin is a digital currency pegged to the dollar, usually backed by real assets. Tether, Circle, they hold billions in reserves, and someone has to custody that.
JPMorgan is saying, let us be that someone, on-chain.
Which is strange because 5 years ago, JPMorgan's CEO Jamie Dimon was calling Bitcoin a fraud. Now, the bank is building financial infrastructure inside the same ecosystem.
The first tokenized fund they launched was called BUIDL. That was with BlackRock. This new filing is a separate product, purpose-built for stablecoin issuers. The specificity is what matters. They're not experimenting anymore. They know exactly who the customer is.
Stablecoin reserves are enormous. Tether alone holds over $100 billion in U.S. Treasuries. If even a fraction of that starts flowing through a JPMorgan product on Ethereum, the bank becomes load-bearing infrastructure for the entire sector.
And the regulatory picture is shifting fast. The U.S. is moving toward formal stablecoin legislation this year. Once there are rules, institutions need compliant places to park money. JPMorgan is positioning before the rules land.
The world's largest bank is quietly becoming the back office of crypto, and it's doing it through the most boring possible product, a fund that holds government bonds.
And the timing is deliberate. Stablecoin legislation moving through Congress this year would require issuers to hold reserves in regulated, liquid assets, exactly what a JPMorgan money market fund is. They're not guessing that rules are coming, they're building the compliant infrastructure in advance.
There's also a custody question underneath this. Right now, stablecoin issuers largely self-custody or use smaller crypto-native firms. A JPMorgan product changes who's holding the keys and who's liable when something goes wrong.
The least exciting thing imaginable, sitting at the center of something that was supposed to make all of this obsolete. The question nobody has answered yet is whether JPMorgan is domesticating crypto or crypto is domesticating JPMorgan. Neutrinos are particles so small and so reluctant to interact with anything that right now billions of them are passing straight through your body, through the earth, through everything, and you'll never feel a single one.
Which is exactly why catching them tells you something nothing else can. They come straight from where they were made. No detours, no deflection. A neutrino from the center of the sun has never touched another particle since it left.
And the center of the sun is genuinely unreachable any other way. Light takes tens of thousands of years to fight its way out from the core. Neutrinos take about 2 seconds.
So a neutrino detector pointed at the sun is essentially a direct line to something we've never actually seen.
The detectors we have on Earth are enormous. There's one in Antarctica called IceCube that uses a cubic kilometer of ice just to catch enough of them to be useful, and even that barely catches any.
The shoebox they just sent to orbit, a CubeSat about 12 inches long, is small enough to hold under your arm. It's not going to catch many neutrinos. That's not really the point yet.
The point is proving the technology survives in space, because if it does, the next version gets closer, and near the sun there are over 1,000 times more neutrinos than here.
Which means a 1 kilogram detector close to the sun could do what a building-size instrument does on Earth. Someone described it as putting a microscope directly into the core of the star.
We've had telescopes for 4 centuries. We've been watching the surface of the sun the whole time.
And the core has just been sitting there, completely dark to us, waiting. A few things caught our eye today. Developers started talking openly about something they'd been quietly noticing, that AI coding tools aren't just writing bad code, they're making the developers themselves worse at catching the bad code.
Skills atrophy when you stop using them.
And the loop is uncomfortable. The people best positioned to review AI output are losing the judgment that makes review meaningful.
One developer wrote that fixing what the AI produced took longer than writing it from scratch would have.
Which raises a question nobody has a clean answer to yet. If the code ships and it works, does it matter that nobody fully understood it?
At some point, the answer to that question has a cost.
A startup called Span wants to put small AI data centers in people's backyards. Not huge facilities, quiet boxes running the same NVIDIA chips that power massive warehouse-scale systems, just distributed across thousands of ordinary homes.
And they'd pay homeowners back through cheaper electricity and internet bills.
The pitch is basically, what if the infrastructure that runs AI looked less like a campus and more like a network of neighbors?
It sidesteps the land fights, the water fights, the permit fights that come with building something at scale in one place.
Whether it works depends on things like heat, noise, reliability, all the unglamorous logistics that tend to kill elegant ideas.
But the underlying problem it's trying to solve is real. There's nowhere left that wants to host a data center. Microsoft built an AI system to find security vulnerabilities in its own software, and in 1 month, it found 16 of them.
In the first 5 months of 2026, Microsoft has already patched over 500 vulnerabilities.
Security researchers have a name for this, a patch wave. The AI finds bugs faster than humans can review and fix them, so the volume just keeps climbing.
Which sounds like progress, and it is. Bugs getting found is better than bugs not getting found.
But there's a version of this where the software world spends the next decade in a permanent catch-up posture, and the organizations that can't keep up with the patching pace are the ones that quietly become the weakest link.
A new poll asked Americans what they'd rather have built near their homes, a nuclear reactor or a data center.
Nuclear reactors have been the standard reference point for things people don't want nearby. They lost.
71% of Americans oppose having a data center built near them. 53% oppose a nuclear plant.
The main concern isn't anything to do with AI taking over. It's water use and energy draw, both of which are substantial and visible in ways people can look up.
And the opposition is consistent across party lines, which is notable because almost nothing is right now.
AI infrastructure needs to go somewhere, and the math on that is getting harder.
The locations that will accept a data center and actually have the power grid to run one are becoming a very short list.
Tomorrow.
Something happened today that most people haven't caught up to yet.
And by the time they do, something else will have happened.
That's the job.
See you then.
Singularity Pulse is for informational purposes only. Nothing here is financial, legal, or professional advice. Views expressed are our own.
I'm Knox. Every Saturday on Pulse Deep Dive, one story told in acts. This season, how AI happened, who really invented the internet, and going back to the moon 53 years later. New chapter every Saturday. Find it wherever you listen.
Origins is a different kind of show. Every Sunday, we investigate the forces that shape the modern world, the geography, the science, the commerce, the decisions made centuries ago that are still playing out today. Find it wherever you listen to this podcast.